Hello, and welcome to the 5th episode of Beyond the Eclipse. If you haven't tuned in before, in these episodes, me and V, we go over the old episodes, we listen back to them, and we just kind of ramble and rant about different things, and we kind of dig into the different elements of this show. But we used to have a video element to the show, and I currently just do not have the time to deal with it. A lot is going on in my life, and I was the only video editor, so unfortunately, we're just going to skip it for now. We owe the good people of Patreon about 5 or 6 of these episodes, and I just want to start getting them out for you guys. So thank you so much for waiting patiently, and enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Eclipse. I'm your host, I guess, Aethod, and with me, as always, is Volonda.
Hi.
Today we're doing the 5th episode, episode 5, The Breakfast Club of TLD. If you don't remember what this silliness is about, Beyond the Eclipse is a little recap series me and V do, where we go through the episodes and we talk about things that may not have come up or things that can be discussed a little bit more, little tips and tricks about doing D&D and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's a good ripping apart of how did you DM this? I don't know. I made it up.
What are stats? I don't do that.
It's it's a no holds barred of how did you get through this? The answer is I don't know. It's just a look into how this shit goes together on at least my side of the screen and plots that never were and will never be. So.
Yeah. So at the start of episode 5, I'm going to read the intro, which is... God. Welcome back, minions, to the Lucky Die. Previously, Balance learns more about his situation, Raljak receives much-needed healing, and Sultana meets a woman with hooves and horns. With Caden as their boss and a new telepathic link, Kythea reveals herself to be more than meets the eye. How will they react to the news that one of their own is royalty? Will they be able to survive Demi's mission? And what new digs will Caden take them to? I guess we're about to find out. Welcome back to the Lucky Die.
Yeah.
That's a good one. What do you mean, what new dicks will Caden take them to? What's that mean?
I realised when I heard it back this time listening through to it, it probably is a really British thing, but sometimes you call a place where you live your digs. Just a place where you are. Yeah.
The American version would be crib, I assume.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
All right. Yeah. So the episode starts out pretty good, in my opinion. It's
that sounds like the episode's going to turn out bad. It starts out well, but it gets a little shitty towards the end.
That's not what I said. I didn't say anything like that. No. The episode starts out really good. You have the cliffhanger from the last episode, which is Laffian being told that he's no longer the second to the throne.
Yeah.
And yeah, Kythea's revealing that. And I think in the first minutes, you have Arch doing pretty good character development for his character. He really isn't picking up on even the idea that he could have another brother. He even runs circles around Kythea, just trying to get her not to say I have a brother. It's who could it be? Oh, he's next in line. Well, I can't think of a single person that could accomplish that. It's what house is he from? He's from Datherdeer. Really?
Yep.
Did my parents adopt? It's he's doing everything. He doesn't say that, but he still
considers the idea that he is the only child, and it's been 50 years. I'm nah, screw that. They clearly have another kid. Yeah, and I think I even used the phrase, because Arch was like dancing around it a little bit, I just used the phrase "your father's son," and I just thought that as a phrase is just super funny.
You absolutely used that phrase, and it did stick out to me because my brain was like, that does imply something, but
Yeah, that's a kind of a me reference. I referenced one of my older brothers as my mother's son. So I all my siblings are half siblings. And it was just kind of a running kind of joke with us. It doesn't make sense to anyone but me. I'm sorry. It was just I wanted to. Yeah, I kind of I saw an opportunity to use that phrase, so I did.
It's a good phrase, and it sounds really like royalty-like because, in that dumb way, it's really only one parent that matters in the bloodline when it comes to certain things.
Yeah, especially in this one because it's the brother. Sorry, it's the father that is related to the queen and not like Laffian's mother. So,
yeah, I really enjoy that scene. It's a cool scene, and it moves on to. Balance trying to get Kythea to join them on a quest, and I have it written down. Kythea really doesn't want to join the group, and then brackets. That's probably V trying not to have two NPCs.
Yes, 100%. So, in that scene when they're talking about stuff, I have Caden leave because I don't want to have to. It makes no sense for Caden to be there and be quiet whilst all these things are being revealed. So I made him leave, and I don't mind, especially in very low level parts of the game, to have an NPC that can help protect them, because as we all know, the first 3 levels you have to protect people really heavily. Because it's just very, very low hit points, 2 hits from a goblin and you're sort of down. I'm like, no. We'll have some there who can help them out, answer questions, help direct the plot a little bit if needed. And I did not want Kythea to be part of the active part of the missions. I wanted her to be in the background, helping them out with information, doing some research and stuff, going back and doing her things in Kino when she needed to. I wanted her in the background. I didn't want her anywhere involved in the fight or the active part of this shit. I can't deal with that. No way.
Get away from my party. I need you to be doing other things, please.
Yes. Yeah. Also because it's the story about our players versus about the bunch of random NPCs that they can force into the party. No, I don't want to do that.
Well, watch them try.
Yes. I'm looking at you, episode 180 something. Fuck you, episode 180 something. When it comes out, you guys will understand why I'm upset.
Yeah, we're recording this. Episode 160 just came out, I think. It'll probably be dropped next week, so it will probably slot right in.
Episode 158 dropped this week, which was late. To put it in a bit more time context, the episode that came out 3 days late because newest PC shit itself. We're recording just after that, but we have recorded up to episode 189, I think.
Oh, it's ludicrous how far ahead we are.
Yeah, I'm very happy about that.
Very luckily so, because we're having a surprising amount of back when we were recording through 150 to 180, we were like, everything's going wrong, and now we're just like, oh no, everything was going right. Now things are going wrong. Sorry, back on
focus. Also, in that kind of scene bit where Laffian and Kythea are chatting and they're learning more about him being a prince and not being exactly where he thought he was in the Ascension line anymore, he mentions Apella.
Yes, he does.
He mentions Apella. He's like, I don't want Apella to get hold of me. Who knows what she'll do with me? And I'm like, Apella doesn't give a shit. She doesn't know who you are. She's younger than you've been in prison. She has no concept of who you are, and she wouldn't care. She'd be like, oh, I could talk to him and learn stuff. It wouldn't be nefarious. It's she doesn't know him. She's not out to assassinate him. She just didn't know.
That's actually kind of funny that Apella ordered his death, not knowing it's that kill everybody in the dungeon. It's are you sure you don't want to read this really old document? No, just fucking burn them all. You guys with your life in prison. No, kill him.
Just these are my laws. I'm not making an exception. No, fuck it.
Apella, no. I highly recommend you read this really old.
Lindgren kind of jumping the gun a bit, motherfucker. I see any opportunity to be an asshole. Lindgren jumps on it, so.
Yeah. Is Lindgren trying behind the scenes to try to fuck with Apella? Is that any part of that?
Not really. Lindgren just sees like someone who can help him achieve and do the things that he wants to do as a prison warden, which is be pretty tough and harsh. But yeah, otherwise, no, he's not out to screw with anyone in particular. Just treat criminals the way he thinks criminals should be treated. So
yeah. And then Balos's real name gets revealed. With this Lathian Deathridir.
It's really strange to me to hear everyone referring to him as Lathian. To Balance. Like, just listening back, I just had that. Who the fuck is... Oh, it's Lathian. Right, yeah,
It's been a while. It's been a while.
It's been a while since his name has changed. It's super weird for me to hear that.
Took some concerted effort for me. I'm real bad with names to okay, rewire your goddamn brain, Atho. You need to do this.
Yeah.
And then we have our first bit of PvP.
Yeah. So we had a chat before we started the game. We set out some basic ground rules. We did some basically basic everything. Like, hey, if things are going bad, just shout. I am personally not a fan of PvP. And that was something that I brought up before we started recording. It's like, as a default, PvP is turned off. I don't like it. I don't think it's great for group dynamics. But that's my personal preference. If everybody involved agrees, and this is the only solution, inverted commas, or it's funny and everyone's okay with it, sure, go ahead. Go ahead and do that. But it's something we should talk about before we do it, not like, I'm just going to smack him. Like, no. Talk about if there's something that you guys want to do instead, like whatever. Like, I would prefer that. The exception was when you came along as Squash, and I'm like, nope. All bets are off. Yeah. You're going to be a dick. Fuck it. You can wait on him as much as you want. But for the most part, like this is the first time we have that PvP. I'm like, all right, everyone's okay with it. Everyone's chill. Everyone's rolling with it. All right, let's do it.
Oh. Yeah. I remember you telling me, like, if they decide to kill you, I'm not stopping them. I was a good, like, okay. I understand. Help me get even more into character for Squash because... Again, we'll get to this on episode 39.
Yeah, or some jazz like that. Yeah.
And I found it quite funny that what was it that Sultana was calling Lathian? Laffy Taffy or something like that?
Or just call him Laugh or Laugh. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, and Arts is real quick to turn it back on her, on Sultana and calling her Zuzu.
I love Zuzu. I genuinely love Zuzu. It's why Caden turned up at about that right moment so I could call her Zuzu. And also to get the story back on rails, because there was like little bits of like power trips going and like friction potentially developing. I'm like, nope, cut that shit off. Let's get Caden and then get on with the story.
Yeah. And then we proceed from there that Caden takes them through the town and he's going to take them to his home.
Yeah.
But before he does that, there was one little line. It might have just been a throwaway phrase that I mistook. But you say the phrase, Lindgren doesn't really care about the team.
Yeah.
Like, you say that in context that Caden doesn't think that he needs to tell Lindgren that he's taking them to his place.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Like Lindgren is in a bit of a pickle because he was supposed to execute these prisoners, but the world cancelled that basically, and he's now stuck with people that he's like, okay, fine, we'll throw them at the apocalypse. They'll probably get themselves killed. Fuck it. Beyond that point, he doesn't really care about like the minutiae of their day. He doesn't really care about where they're kept. He doesn't care about whether they're fed properly. He doesn't care about what kind of missions exactly they go on and who's in charge and how that all works. All he cares is that they're not in his way, they're not in his eyesight, and he can do as much plausible deniability as possible. And also say he sent them off on suicide missions. Like, he doesn't care about them at all. And also, I didn't want them to interact with Lindgren because I realized that they really hated Lindgren. And the hallmark of a particularly good villain, in my opinion, is like, you don't see him very often. He's just a presence that's just irritating and an asshole. So I was like, all right, they really dislike him. I'm making sure that they don't interact with him too much. So,
yeah. Then we have the team go on a little walk through the town as they're going towards Caden's dick, and you describe the town really intensely. Like, you clearly had a vision for what Folsom should look like.
So it's the first time we've really seen at like the place where everything is going to be centered around, where everything is going to be set. In my thought process, I thought this is where most of the things would be. This would be like where they consider their base, and I clearly did an okay job at that because that is the base.
Yep.
So like I wanted to set it up. I wanted to show like the kind of area that we're in. There's kind of the arid desert kind of area, and we hadn't really seen that in anybody's backstory. And this is the first time to really kind of build and set that world. And I think you can hear. I think this might be the third time we start recording. I think it is, and I can tell I feel and sound more confident and comfortable with the DMing because obviously I was really nervous in the first one. I was really nervous in the second one. And then we hit this like stride. We were just hanging out, chatting. If you've listened to the bloopers, spoiler alert, you can hear how the beginning of this recording session went. So I was already very comfortable, and I like, there's still stumbles. That's just me talking anyway. But yeah, you can tell and hear I'm much more comfortable in that description area. And I still see it very clearly what Faustum looks like. So I'm just glad that came across.
Yeah, you're very confident in your description of Faustum, and you do it very well, I think.
Okay.
And Neil has rendered a bunch of the music from the early episodes, and he refuses to release them because he has a lot of like clicks and pops and buzzes in there because he can't get the original files out anymore. Neil's most recent hardware crash is not the first one. And this song, I think it's called Walking Out.
Stepping Out.
I think it's Stepping Out.
And it is beautiful.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
It has that, like, I don't know, sense of freedom and wonder about it, and mixed up with them, like, staring at the stars. I'm like, I don't think I mentioned the stars. I think they mentioned looking up. And, like, first time we've breathed in ages, I'm like, yeah, this is exactly the music that should go here. Like, massive props to Neil. You made that sound good.
It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I think. And that scene is then tempered with an run-in.
Yeah,
Cassandra.
Yeah.
Now,
so Neil had been playing up really well before he even went out. I don't know if you picked it up, like in hindsight, but he had mentioned that his nose had started running, which is the cue that I had, like Neil had to roll a con save. And he's nervous about going out into Faustum because Faustum was his home for many years, and everybody knows that the only other Dragonborn is dead, and it was at his hands. That's what people know and assume. And it's only been a year. So he played up that fear and that worry really well. I'm like, okay, I hear him doing that. I know what he wants. I'm going to drop in this asshole of a neighbor, which actually replaced the other random NPC they were going to bump into, you know, world building and stuff. They were going to bump into the babysitter for Talus. But because Neil had started dropping those seeds, I'm like, screw it. I'll take her out. I'll replace her with an asshole neighbor who knows exactly what went on, so that he could have that interaction, so we could build that fear in it and explain why that's a thing for him.
Yeah. I find it funny that like she has this kind of like jovial or cordial interaction with Balance and Sultana, and then like looks over their shoulder, sees the demon, and is like, oh no, was I polite to you fuckers? And I think I think she spits at the ground twice.
Yeah, twice. Yeah.
It is such a, like, it is something that is no longer done in polite company, and it's such a loss. It is that, like, if you're arguing with somebody, we should go back to spitting on the ground when you're, when you feel...
No, we shouldn't. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. Don't spit at things, people.
No, spit at everybody. Spit in their face.
No, don't do that.
That's a solid way to get punched.
Like, I always assumed it was gross before the pandemic. I genuinely find it gross. It's so cringy to me.
Well, too bad. I'm going to look to Cassandra for guidance in the future.
Please don't, folks. But yeah, like, I wanted her to, like, because Neil had dropped those seeds, I wanted to basically work with that and run with that. So yeah, the kind of nice jovial woman that they were going to meet, who was Talus' babysitter, became the asshat neighbor, Cassandra.
Yeah, she absolutely fucking shreds him. It's fucking brutal.
Yeah.
And then they go inside, and Caden, he drops hints about the fact that he has a family. It's all like very like hush hush. And then they have their bracelets removed.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like, it was an interesting timing. Is there a reason why you held on to it so long?
Not really. I think I'd forgotten to do it. And then I was like, oh shit, I remember I now need to do this. And I was like, okay, great. They can be when they're outside of the prison. Great, that makes sense. I think I had intended to do it earlier. It's literally not written in my notes anywhere that I was going to release them from the bracelets. I just remember thinking in the moment, shit, I haven't removed their bracelets. I should probably do that, right? So I moved it to a time that made a bit more like that made a bit more sense. Like, they're in the home, great. I can pop them off here. It sounds good. They're outside of the prison. Let's do it.
Yeah. I've learned my lesson of assuming that you've set up and prepared things. The boxes where everybody's stuff was stored is my cue to not do that anymore. It really does feel like you knew what was going to happen when you took the bracelets off.
No, I had no idea. Like, I was like, I just know I need to take them off, and I'd forgotten to do that, and I hadn't written it in my notes. It was an oversight on my half. I'm like, all right. On the fly, I was trying to figure out when to do that. I'm like, great, I'll wait until they're actually at Caden's house. I think it was probably as they were chatting about Lindrin that I had like that thought of like, oh, I need to get these bracelets off these folks.
Yeah. And I think it's a really, really good, oh God, what do you call it? World building, I guess. When the bracelet gets taken off Sultana, that she can feel her god in the first time for a very long time.
Oh yeah, like there will definitely be something that we'll chat on that in a minute, actually, about Sultana's dream and like why I needed to have the bracelets off at a certain point and how they affected people's magics. I don't know if we've discussed it in Beyond the Eclipse yet, but they basically suppress a lot of things, including a lot of magic, and I didn't want prisoners to have magic. That makes no sense. Why would you allow them to do that? Hence why the magic bracelets are here in the first place. I'm like, okay, some people have innate magic, some people have God-given magic, some people are bargained for it, some people have learned it. All right, I need to find a way of negating that. And it's like, okay, if I have to negate God magic, then they just don't feel that connection magically with their God anymore. So as soon as it's gone, it needs to come back.
Yeah. We have a reference to the weird discussion of how to get Raoul through the city without causing ruckus, where Raoul is given a mustache.
Genuinely, as soon as I got the magic bracelets off and Arch did that, I was dying.
It's genuinely a fucking chuckle scene. It's a good one. And not long after that, we have Raoul asking to go meet Bulgrim to give him the letter.
Yes, I was not expecting that. And then I was like, how do I delay this? And then I thought, I don't need to delay it. I'll just run it. I roughly know what I'm doing. It's fine. It'll be great. I've got this.
And then we have another great scene where Balance tries to mess around with the link.
Yeah, I have notes in about this. So he's asking to mess around with the link to like probe it and do it with his psychic powers. And we've had this discussion a lot about how do we separate psychics from magic, because psychics shouldn't be able to undo magic stuff if magic can't undo psychic stuff. So I needed to keep them very separate. So any checks involved with magic messing with psychics or psychics messing with magic needs to be very difficult, because they're not supposed to be the same. The outcome and the effects are the same, but they're supposed to operate very differently. Like trying to put a piece of program into Windows versus a Mac machine. Like, they're supposed to be very different. They're not supposed to work very well together. So I was deliberately making the check kind of hard. And then he fluffed it anyway because Roll20 hates him or likes the story, whatever you want to go with. And it's screwed. So I was like, all right, how do I make this fun as a failure? Like, he's tried it, but it's not worked out perfectly well. And maybe give an option to do it in the future. But as it was, he never tried again. So I'm like, yes. Well, until much, much later, but that's neither here nor there.
And I thought you did a good thing where you're like trying to figure out what to do about this scene, and I have no idea how much dead air is cut in this scene. Like,
not
this is war before.
No, no.
But you real quick go. What was it? Like, you ask Arch to describe what he's trying to do, as you're like, what do I roll? What do I make him do? How do I fix this? Yeah, and I thought that was a really, really good, like, it was an intelligent like move on your behalf as a DM.
Yeah, it's twofold actually. One, because I like to understand where they're going with it, like especially people's abilities, they develop through those moments of like, how are you doing this? What's going on here? But it also, as me as a GM, buys time to figure out what to do. And also if the player has a certain idea, Arch had an idea of like he'd be using a bit like a GPS pinging system, like, okay, great, now I know how to describe that if that is what it is you're doing. And then interesting things evolve from that, abilities, ideas, powers, like stuff like that. So kind of twofold. One, it gives me time to think, and two, I understand what it is that people are trying to do. So I was very happy with how that turned out. Also, it was super funny, so...
Yeah, it's a fun scene. And we move on from there to Sultana's dream, I think.
Yeah. So I always knew that Odette was alive. I think I'd mentioned that before. And she'd been trying, or unconsciously trying, because she's doing it in her dreams, to cast Sending at Sultana because she is a cleric and she has access to that. And I wanted them to be able to communicate. I wanted her to learn very quickly that her wife was alive, but because of the anti-magic bracelet, the things weren't going through very well, so the divine she felt was much less, and her wife was, a cleric, so there's clearly some divine shit going on there. And I was like, okay, I can do it through dreams, then it's not something that's going to invade the everyday. It can be done as a side scene. It's not like something that would interrupt the flow of the rest of the narrative or the game. So I had that set up, and I knew as soon as the magic bracelet came off, which is when I was like, shit, it's not in my notes, I need to take them off before they sleep. I knew that would be the first dream, so I knew it would always be Odette. I just didn't know the format of how that would look, because I didn't write any of that stuff down. I think you hear me asking, like, what are you dreaming about? Odette, perfect. Yes, you fell into my plan. So other than that, I just, ran with it. Like the dream, I knew exactly what would happen. I knew that there would be that moment where she would hear someone asking for help, but she wouldn't necessarily 100% know what. And that's why she had to do the wisdom save, just because I wanted to keep that idea of like, you don't know what this is. You don't know if it's good or bad. And if it's bad, I'd make you roll a wisdom save anyway. But I don't want to automatically assume it's good because I'm not asking you for it. I want to keep that mystery in there a little bit longer.
Yeah, you do that like throughout the whole story, and we're gonna get to it. There is a really, really good scene where they're trying to fuck with with what's going on in the dreams and that stuff. We'll get to it when we get to it, but I just wanted to say now, like when I was listening back to this, I was picking up on the she's doing a wisdom save against receiving a Sending from her wife. It's a clever idea because it is invasive and it is not something that Sultana knows what is. It's a good idea. It's well handled, I think. Is the
Thank
phrase.
you. Although I think I'm more often than not, I think especially in like dreams and stuff like that, it's almost always good. I've never actually had an invasive evil guy do it yet, and I kind of realized that I think fairly recently when we did another thing where we're fucking around with dreams in a recent episode and have someone roll a save. I'm like, I've never actually had a bad guy do this. I should have a bad guy do this, right? And I'm like, I don't know. It feels like a dick move.
Well, you do have access to bad guys, so...
I do. I have some access to some very bad guys. I'm very happy about this. But either way, yeah.
So, I guess I want to ask this. During the flashback, before, when it turns nightmarish, you kind of describe Odette having her neck snapped.
Yep.
Is that a ref?
Yes, it is. So, whenever I didn't exactly know the form that the mirror scenes would take. I knew that there would be some. I knew kind of roughly that the mirror is a thing because the mirror is one of the, the access to how they would get into Marnak. That changed a little bit, but the general idea was still there. I didn't have it written in concrete. And I knew that there would be flashbacks, and I wanted to make sure that whenever I referenced Odette dying, it was in a particular way. So I would make sure I'd use either very similar or the same words, but it would always be the same actions. It was the head being knocked from side to side and snapping and cracking. I tried to make sure that imagery was the same whenever I referenced that, so that when folks looked back on it, or if they were paying attention, that they could go, oh, it's the same person being described. It's the same moment. And it's exactly the same moment when Odette quote unquote died when she was taken away from Sultana. So it's exactly that same thing that she witnessed at that moment.
All right. Yeah. So you have Sultana waking up from her nightmare, And I want to give a little bit of props to Neil for the choice of music, and to Casey for the little gasp that they do when they are awoken. That combined really like for a second you forget you're listening to an actual play. Like you're like
It's come off of a really beautiful moment between Odette and Zoltana, and I love their romance. I love them so much. They are such a beautiful couple. Their ideologies are kind of different, but they are just so good together, and it's really nice seeing that, like, looking forward to the future, even though we all know in hindsight that that's probably not going to happen. But, like, seeing them together and then waking up and Casey like going with the moment in there. Neil's music dumps, like there is the happy dream music, there is the sad dream music, and then Taylor's theme. Like, holy shit, Neil. God fucking damn it, dude.
Yeah, we move on from the nightmare to introducing Taylor's. Now,
yeah, it was at this point that I realised never ever could there be any harm done to this child, and I don't know where that cuteness came from. I have no idea.
How much of Taylor's was planned in that moment? So I remember you saying that originally Caden was supposed to have kids that were out of the house, or no kids. I don't remember. He
was supposed to have 3. Like, in the moment, like, Caden was supposed to have 3 when I realised, Caden would have people outside of this, right? And in the moment, I'm like, yeah, it's going to have kids, totally. And then I was asked about them, like, 1, I'm not doing 3 children voices, fuck. I knew that just when I envisioned suddenly, like, shit, Caden needs to have kids, he would have small kids, and they would be young, and they would be excitable, and they would be, like, interested in the world, and they'd idolise their father. Great, perfect. Moving on. I didn't write Taylor's interrupting Zoltana after her dream. I didn't have that written anywhere. That's not written down in any of my notes at all. I was just going to have Caden, there's the kid, he keeps the kid as far away as possible, but then we'd had the improvised conversation about family and adoption, and like Zoltana having a bad moment and a nightmare, and receiving at least some words of sending from Odette. I was like, well, you're waking up and there are just... What do you see? Well, I used to wake up in the middle of the night a lot as a kid, so screw it, let's do it. No, none of that was planned at all. And you can hear me trying to find Taylor's voice through that entire scene.
Well, you hide it quite well, because I did not pick up that you hadn't decided on a voice.
Oh, no, like, she doesn't get a solid voice until probably the second time that we meet her. Like, it's very wavery throughout this. Like, there's a little bit of Demi in there if you listen really carefully, and I found it really difficult for the longest time to separate their voices out, because Taylor's is young and excitable, and young and excitable for me is really... quick and fast and all that stuff, and Demi is just quick and fast and always excitable, so I had to kind of in my brain really separate them out, and sometimes I fail. Like, if you listen carefully, like, I will switch their voices up quite a lot.
Yeah, and this scene that precedes the one where Taylor is showing off her magic, we actually have art of that from our talented friend
we do.
Cassie.
Yes, I love Cassie's art so much. That genuinely, I told Cassie this, that genuinely almost made me cry. It was such a swell of emotion when I saw that, because I love Taylor's a lot, and I love the interaction that Taylor's has with each person individually, but this was the first interaction that Taylor's had, and Taylor's is adorably cute, and Zoltana telling her that she could call her Anna was like, in that moment, kind of like made me like, oh, and seeing the art of that. Cassie, I love you. Casey, you're amazing. Thank you for making that scene with me.
Yeah, I actually have it on the wall right there, but I'm not going to move the camera because I don't know if I can put it back at the right place.
Yeah. But we'll find out, but we'll put it somewhere.
If you're on the Patreon, you might have actually seen it in our thank you videos. But yeah, we have Sultana and Taylor's back and forward a little bit about Sultana's name, and I thought it was quite cute that Sultana's the one like, you can just call me Anna, and then Taylor's like, Auntie Anna, let's make it to is it onomatopoeia where you make things like quick cash or something like that?
No, that's alliteration, when like the first letter is the same.
Oh, okay, yeah, you do a little alliteration there, and I thought that was kind of cute. Yeah.
I had to. It was too cute in the moment. I honestly don't know where her cuteness comes from. I don't know why that was so cute. But it was just after that I was like, oh, there can be never any harm to this child. Not that I was planning any, but they could never. I can't do anything to make this poor sweet child upsetty. I can't.
Well, we move on from that. Caden steals Talus away from Sultana, and then we have the cooking scene.
Oh, wow, yeah. I'm going to ask you a question about the cooking scene, actually, because you listened to TLD before you were massively a part of it. So I was like, hey, do you want to come join the show? And you were like, sure, I'll come roleplay. And then you listened to the show. In that moment, I clearly found this super funny. And I just because I'm mean in my brain. But listening back, I didn't find it as funny. Like, I don't understand why this scene works. But I know that it does because a lot of people mention it as one of their favorite funny scenes. Oh, I also have to mention on behalf of Arch can cook. Don't mix up him and Balance. Balance can't cook. Arch can cook. I need to say this because some people seem to forget that we are not our characters. We are not murderous thieves and shit cooks. Most of us aren't shit cooks. But Arch can cook. I'm just going to come out and say that now. Please stop it. Anyway.
What do you know? Maybe I'm a hardcore drug-using thief.
I know that you're none of those things.
Maybe I'm just good at hiding it. Like squash.
No,
there you go.
No. Okay, move on.
We have the famous cook scene, and you were asking, do I think it's funny?
Yeah.
Yes. There is a little bit of a DM being a dick in there.
Oh yeah,
but
100%.
It is not bad enough. Like you're doing the thing that you can't help but doing when you're a DM when people flop. You start telling them what they did. You're telling him he's burnt the food. It's like, yay, like there's nothing you can do about that. Like sometimes you have to do that. And Arch absolutely plays into it where he's like, oh no, it's not supposed to smell like this. Yeah. Shit. Like when he breathed shit under his breath, it was like fucking great. And then you have Ralph come in and I don't know why I think this is such an American thing, but picking up the thing that's on fire and chucking it outside. What is this? Like
it was I think he even explains it in the thing as like, we don't have time to look for water to put this out. Get it out of the building. If it's out of the building, it's not going to set fire to the building. I'm like, I follow that and I think that's great, but my brain also went, if he's cooking eggs, there's going to be oil, and that shit is going to spread.
So you have them blundering around, and they chuck the thing out of the window. Yep. And this second time around, listening to it, the first thing I thought was the London fires. Because of how you had described Folsom earlier, which I felt sounded very much like oldie-timey London. Like this like cramped streets and like dusty roads and alleys everywhere. He's just like, oh no. Oh, this could have ended much worse. And then Sultana comes in and like, what are you guys doing? You're doing it wrong, man. Let me check some fire on it. And I made it worse.
Yeah, I don't know why I asked for the next roll. I just think it because I wanted to, because we, like, you clearly heard from the beginning of that recording session, we were just on one. I don't know what we were on, but we were just fucking on one.
Absolutely happens.
We were just, and it was just like, how could we escalate this to be bigger and funnier than it is? It's just one of those moments that stuck. I still like doing that on occasion. Just like, all right, this is clearly a break from the very hardcore, serious moment that we've been doing through this story. Fuck it, let's have some fun and just dick around and see what we can do. This was definitely one of those moments. And I don't try not to do that too often now because we've gotten to the point in the story where it actually is fucking serious. Like, shit, things are getting worse. But in that moment, it was just so funny just to see how much worse we could make this situation before we tidied it up and moved on with the story.
And then Caden comes out of the bedroom like, what have you idiots done? Like, pick up that water.
My favourite line really is Casey's, you invited 3 murderers to your house and we set it on fire. Like, yes, what did he expect?
Yes. I was laughing really hard at that. I was laughing really hard at Balance's I'll make it better. I'll give you money. How much money can I give you?
Yeah.
I'll go buy food. Surely if I'm out of jail, that means I have access to money again. I can solve my problems.
Was it the only thing I know is money? And I'm like, yeah, your father's money. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm glad that he's grown as a character because I would have gotten annoyed with this a long time ago.
Yeah. No, it's a fantastic scene. I think it's still funny. There are like little scenes in between where you're like, Avi, you're being mean, but they're all playing into it, so it's absolutely just fun and games. I think.
It's sometimes like, being a dick DM is generally dickish, but if everyone is laughing their ass off and it's funny and it's being encouraged to make it worse, fuck it. Just go with it. Like, it's your table, have fun.
It takes all four of them to put it out. It's fantastic. And then
they head out
Caden.
After that point. Yeah, like Caden is being the dad at this point. Partially because I wanted to get them away from this hilarity onto the plot that is happening. And, you know, to get them moving. And it's like, well, he's a dad. He is a small kid. He has to do dad moments. Fuck it. He'll treat them all as kids at this point and like dad them out of the bloody the fire ruined kitchen and off to the Witcher Society.
Yeah, you have Caden like cook for everybody and then just kind of ushers them on, and you say the phrase, if Caden was the kind of dad who would pack lunch, you would all have little brown paper bags. I thought that was very like a cute description of the kind of like, it's so dumb, but like in a way when you said that, my brain went like, oh, Caden wants to be that dad, but he doesn't have the time. But that's not what you said, but that's what my brain reads into that sentence.
Yeah, so Caden's house and Caden's situation, I try to explain without using the words Caden is super poor. Like everything in his house is threadbare, nothing matches. Even his daughter is wearing like a nightdress which is threadbare and like, you know, not great. I tried to do that without using quite so many words, without blatantly saying it, sorry. So for me, like, he wants to be a good dad and he's being the best dad, like best single widowed father he can be with the limited supplies that he has. And there is a reason why he has no money. It just never came up, and it still hasn't come up. And I don't think it will come up until the backstory episode for Caden, and I'm super upsetty.
Right, you've actually told me why.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are just gonna have to wait for it.
Yeah, you have to wait on that one. Spoilers, I won't talk anymore. But yeah, there's, you know, I wanted to explain it. He was poor, and he wants to be able to be the dad who makes the thing in time in the morning for the kid who's always at home and can like teach her to do stuff. He buys as many books as he can for her. He just can't do everything. What?
You did like a really cute thing when Laffian's pretending to read and he's gonna start fucking with the psychic link.
Yeah.
And you have tailors have written in the margins of all the books.
Yeah. So like we used to sometimes get like homework books which had like exercises and then you had to like fill them out and then take them home. That was your homework. And that's exactly what I wanted some of these workbooks to be for magic, and that's what Taylor's was doing. So she has like notes, everything on everywhere, and like really childish scrawl, like something we would consider very easy, just like a cantrip to cast like a sparks or something. Like she doesn't know how to do that. She's a kid learning it. So she's like, I have to move my hand to the right like this. Like they have to be written in there, like clearly.
Yeah. I have to mumble this word because if I say it too clearly, I say it wrong.
Yeah, like... exactly. Just mumble it and people will assume I might be doing the right thing.
Then flick the lighter and people think you bait fire. Aha!
Yes.
Caden's trying to be the best dad he can. But yeah, it's not always that easy, and I think that's kind of a through line through a lot of your stories. It's not always easy to be good.
It's difficult. It's a harder path. But ultimately, in my opinion, for the most part, more rewarding than taking the shortcut and easy route. Like Caden probably could make a shit ton of money doing some really dicey, dodgy shit, but he doesn't want to do that.
Looking at Ral beating people up for money.
Hayden is not quite the fighter that Ral is. He would not survive well in the fourfold fights.
He's got access to soul fire on his blade. He can kick anybody's ass.
Not getting into why his blade is green unless I'm specifically asked in the podcast, and then I promise you guys I will probably make it up. I have some ideas, but depending on how out of left field that conversation comes.
So we go to the Witch's Lodge, which is prompted basically by tailors needing to go to class. And they need to meet up with Demi again. Yeah. And on the way, when they arrive there, there's a little side gag that you never really got to go into details. And it gets left in so weirdly. The fact that Neil didn't edit any of it out, that you guys didn't edit any of it out, really, like... I am very anal about this kind of shit. If I was the editor and I'd left in a joke like that never gets explained, I'd be fucking livid, and that would be cut.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So when they arrive in the Witch Society, there's a lot of potted plants everywhere. Tiny little potted plants.
All right, let's talk about the potted plants. All right, so
yes,
when
let's
they
talk
arrive,
about the potted plant in the room.
Yeah, let's talk about the potted plant in the room. There are a lot of plant pots and potted plants in the Witches Society, like more than you would expect. And before we hit talking about the receptionist, they make their way up to Demi's room, and I get them to roll perception checks, and 2 of them fail. One of them doesn't get quite enough to see exactly what it is to tell them. So I start dropping some of the plot points and the hints that, hey, you see a young man, he looks at a plant pot very intently, and then he throws it against the wall, and it turns into a person. Yeah, that's wild magic going off. That's wild magic happening when the apocalypse comes. There's blood rain outside. There is an earthquake. Really bad shit's happening. Anyone who has a connection with any gods are feeling some very bizarre shit happening right now. Those people who lost their god are just ruined. So wild magic in my world happens not just because you fuck with magic and all that good shit, like the things that are like specified in the class list, but also through strange and bizarre emotions like sudden fear and change in things. Like blood rain coming down is probably gonna, activate that wild magic shit. So I had people being turned into potted plants, which was on one of the wild magic surge tables that me and my buddy made when when Demi was a home character. So I kept some of those wild magic surges, and I thought, great, I'll put people in as plant pots. It'll be kind of fun. They failed. They didn't get a 15 on their perception. Otherwise, they would have had, and this was my reference to Plants vs. Zombies, the little plants would be singing something if they had a 15 on perception, and it was going to be, there's a demon on your lawn, there is a celestial on your lawn. And I thought that would be cute, but nobody rolled any higher than that, and nobody looked at the plant pots. Nobody broke them to break anyone else out of the plant pots. I'm like, all right, cool, I'll let it be there.
Yeah, so what is left behind is, there's a surprising amount of plant pots in this room. And everybody's like, uh-huh. And then a little later, somebody comes out and like breaks a plant pot, and a person pops out. And they're like, uh-huh. And you're just like, motherfuckers, like, pay it. It's nobody gonna... Okay, I put it down. Nobody picked it up. Let's move on. But I wouldn't
cut something like that, because what if they came back in episode 20 and they found a random plant pot and they wanted to destroy it because they saw someone at one point way back in their memory banks turn into a person? Maybe there are still people in the Witches Society who are still plant pots.
I was gonna say, is there a plant pot hidden somewhere like behind a shelf?
Like Demi's like, I know who this is. I'm gonna hide this over here. That's why I don't cut stuff, because sometimes
force me to do paperwork now, Mr. Potted Plant.
It was the receptionist's old boss, and he's just hidden it in the back corner. No, can't find him. No, can't find him at all.
Now.
Nope. Yep. So yeah, I like you mentioned, like you would have cut that. I don't, because some of the things that I drop that are like background moments, just side phrases, get pulled back much later in the show. Like some things we drop in between like this episode and I think episode 10, I think it is, like some of them still get pulled out randomly as we go on. So I don't like to cut those things, and also it's world building. Keep it in, man.
Yeah, true. So let's talk about Trampal. Talk about the receptionist.
Let's talk
who
about
doesn't have a name.
The receptionist. So he did not get a name. He was not written in my notes. I just realised when they turn up, there should be a receptionist. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll put a dude in there. He doesn't like his job. He's very bored. Fuck it. Let's just do that. And that's where Trempel came. Like, it was literally just spur of the moment. I realised that we needed a receptionist, and that was just the voice I did. That was the character I made in that moment. He didn't have a name. He wasn't even written down as the receptionist in my notes for fucking ages. Whenever he turns up over the next few episodes, he wasn't scripted to be there. He was just there.
A receptionist.
I never wrote anything about him. And then with the fourfold fights, I'm like, fuck it, screw it. I'm going to write him a character. I'm going to give him a name. And the name he'll use in the fourfolds is the receptionist. Fuck it. So yeah, it was just, I don't know how to explain Trempel. He's become a thing. I wrote more story for him as he came up more often. Yeah.
You, I get, you never watched the TV show Scrubs, did you?
Not really, no.
There's a character in it called the janitor. And,
oh yeah. Yeah.
It's a running gag, and I don't think they ever reveal or give him a name.
I think
and
last episode maybe,
but then again, like, if he's telling the name of the last episode, he's probably just fucking with JD, somebody who watched a lot of Scrubs over here. And I get a heavy janitor vibe from him. It's like, oh, I have a job, and you're not sure I'm doing my job, but goddammit, I haven't been fired yet.
Yeah. So yeah, like, he's grown and developed into something else. Like, I made his relationship stronger with Demi, like how they met. Yeah. I know that now. I know why he's working here. I know his history. I know his, like, proclivities. He likes Elven. Why came up because you rolled and wanted to know how to bribe him. Like, shit like that. I've developed his character as I've gone on, and he actually now has a history. Like, I have some of that shit written down. At the time, yeah, he didn't even have a name. He wasn't even referred to as the receptionist anywhere. It was just, fuck it. This is what came out my mouth at the time.
The gum chewing, is that a reference to anything, or would you just...
The gum chewing comes from a teacher I used to have who used to teach English at my secondary school, and he was constantly chewing gum. Like, so he would deliver, like, this epic speech about, or he'd read, like, an epic sonnet from, like, Romeo and Juliet, and he'd be chewing gum the whole way through, and it completely destroyed my idea of what Shakespeare was supposed to be, because he's like, yeah, like, wherefore art thou? He didn't have a Cockney accent. I just can't chew without having that accent now. But he would chew constantly, and... So I think that's where he came from, and why that chewing thing was a thing, because I found it super annoying. I had this thing where I really don't like the sound of people chewing, and I couldn't tell him to stop. He was my teacher, and I was a really nervous kid, and I didn't want to talk to anyone. So yeah, that's where that chewing comes from. Although, side note, me and a friend of mine who were in that same class, we were reading... not Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, the play that shall not be named. And we both did this scene fluently between us, and it wasn't stumbled, it was beautifully delivered. And he was so impressed that he kind of, at the end of it, he was about to, like, applaud us, and he choked on the chewing gum. It flew across out of his mouth onto the desk in front of my friend. I'm like, that is gross.
Encore.
Yeah, it was so funny. He was just, like, taken aback by the fact that we were just reading it and going for it. So yeah, that was super funny. Anyway, sorry, we're talking about Trempel. I have no idea where he came from.
No, you clearly know where he came from.
I know where the chewing comes from. The bored at his job, that was on the fly move.
The what?
Bored at his job.
Oh, yeah. Casey says something along the lines of, that's a man who does
not like his job. Yeah.
Yeah, like earning a paycheck, I think was the phrase.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he dropped something about Demi being upset about a letter. Now, I haven't listened to the 6th episode in about a couple of months, so I don't know if that letter gets referenced.
It gets referenced in this particular episode. So they go upstairs, and I mentioned that there are letters around. And I think in episode 6, she talks a little bit about, like, oh, it's a letter from my brother, yada, yada, yada. But if they had, I have it not exactly written out, but I had the contents of it written down. I went back through my notes just before we start recording this so I could remember exactly what it was. Because I think, as I've mentioned in the last episode, the gods' voices in their head switched partway through the game, so because I could make things a little bit easier. Demi was supposed to have, oh my gosh, the original Bloodhorn, and he was supposed to have Grumsh, and they're basically the wall that they built between them was supposed to lower those voices, and they could switch them around so they wouldn't have to listen to the one that was trying to make them do bad shit. But the content of the letter still stands. It was basically that Damaz was hearing Grumsh when he shouldn't be. He was worried about the wall, and that Grumsh was worried about what was coming. This was before the apocalypse came. So I put in there that Damaz had known a little bit about what was coming before the first god death. And that's why she was worried and upset, because she didn't receive the letter early enough to be able to go to him and help. So yeah, that's what that is.
All right. And then we have, I think, the first Neil can get it in edit joke. And I just wrote Neil can get it in edit joke, and then I wrote nothing around it, and my brain's
I know exactly what it is.
Now.
I have it in my notes. I forget whether, because obviously Trimper came on the fly. I didn't have the upstairs of the Witcher Society plan out of my head, except, she lived upstairs. Oh shit, now I have to describe it. Fuck, why didn't I write this down?
Right.
Yeah, and it was like, was it left or right? And I honestly didn't remember in the moment whether I said it was left or right. I'm like, yeah, sure, yeah, right, whatever you say. And then it was if you don't get it right, let's re-record it. So I think I then say in Trembar's voice, like, yeah, it's on the right. And I don't know if Neil used that take. I don't know if I was correct. I honestly don't know. I feel like Neil probably didn't. I feel like I was the original take that's in there, but I honestly don't remember.
I didn't go back, but I'm pretty sure you say last door on the left, and then they go upstairs to the left, right? And the whole thing happens. The whole thing goes down.
Yeah, we don't get it in edit. Whatever happened. Yeah. I love those jokes. I think someone asked us recently how many of those, because we leave those Neil get it in edit jokes. Neil doesn't get it in edit. He doesn't. Not often. And it only happens if it's like a crucial plot thing that we wanted to go back and change. But otherwise, leave it in. It's funny. That tends to be how we do that. But I think after that, they go in and actually chat with Demi about the weird shit that she needs them to do. So, yeah, they're just in there chatting with her. And I wanted to make sure that her room was as much chaos as she was. So that's why the bed is unmade, why there are runes everywhere, why there's filthy clothes all over the place. Demi doesn't have a maid, and Demi doesn't have an assistant, even though she's entitled to one. She just won't have that. She just doesn't like people serving her in that manner. She's happy being chaos itself. She just needs a little occasional organization. Which is what Trempel does for her, I guess.
Demi enjoys being on the border of drowning, but doesn't want to drown. So it's good to have a lifeguard around. Yes. But this splashing that's happening, that's not me drowning. This is how I swim. Leave me alone. Yeah. However, if my head submerges, please come get me.
Please come get me. That's basically her world. And I wanted to just show that her room was as much chaos as she is. That's why her room is a complete shithole.
I think you get it across pretty well. I think Demi's character and characteristics come across pretty well in this episode. Yeah. And you have Demi drop the plot, which is there is something with legs, an undesirable amount of legs.
Undisclosed amount of legs.
Disclosed. Down in the sewers, and you guys are going to have to go deal with it because you owe me a favor because that's how favors work, apparently.
Well, no. So, Lindgren owes her a favor. Well, technically, she owed Lindgren a favor, but because what she was doing was so much more than the original favor, Lindgren owed her a favor. And because Lindgren is in charge of these former criminals, actually are criminals, that favor has been shifted from him to his criminals. So they have to do the work.
I have it written down exactly. Balance goes, it's not like we can say no. And Demi goes, exactly. You can't say no. And I need you to say yes. So congratulations, you got a job.
Yeah, I have that written down too. I'd forgotten I said that.
and Neil just cuts the episode right then and there. And it's a fantastic ending to the episode. It's
a good one. And I'd forgotten this episode had the bloopers. I've forgotten this one had the bloopers. That's how we started this recording session, so I understand why we were just on one just at the beginning of this recording of this episode and that was the last time I did anything live. It was about episode 4. Yeah.
You've told me about this many times. You used to do the intros live, but then you stopped. And I didn't remember this blooper. And this blooper very much explains why. And it is because Neil won't let it go.
Yep. And I just start laughing, and then I get a giggle fit every time I go to say Rao's name. Even though I changed what it was, I couldn't stop laughing. So I'm like, all right, at this point, I can't do this live. We're comfortable enough now that we don't need me to like lead us back into it. Like, we're fine. Like, we're good. And I felt more comfortable and happy anyway. Probably because we'd had this like giggle fit before we started. It was about episode 4. It was this one. Like, no, never again.
I think it's a pretty good episode. There's a lot of like funny moments in it. It's all around just a good episode. It moves the plot along, not a bunch, but it sets up a lot of characters, a lot of interactions, a lot of like baselines. We get introduced to Talus and Trampal, 2 of the most important characters ever.
Yeah, I didn't. For a character I made on the fly, I never thought the Trempal would be a thing. I never thought this reception would even probably ever come back again. Like, maybe I'd change that for someone else. But he's just such a character that's stuck. I'm like, all right, cool, I'll make something out of this. Talus, I knew we'd probably see again. Like, I had a theory, like, yeah, they'll probably meet Talus. She'll be in and out a little bit, just a little background character they can interact with. Nope, Talus is like the fucking heart of this goddamn show. Like, fuck it. Talus for MVP.
Around,
we all know
we've
this.
got Talus.
Move over. The true heart of this Sentinel will be Talus. No, I have plans for Talus. Like, I have bigger plans for Talus now because everyone's interacting with her so much. But that tends to also be my philosophy with characters. If someone jives with them, write more for them because they want to interact with them. They want to talk. They want to learn more. And I don't like being massive. I don't mind improvising, being massively underprepared for the ability to improvise. That I stumble with.
The philosophy of like let the characters go where they please, like if the players want to interact with this character, just make them a bigger part of the story. It's a really good thing to keep in your head. And I've seen people actually make whole diagnostic videos about TV shows where they're like, okay, so when the show started, the writers decided these 2 are the pairing that people should be rooting for.
Yeah.
And then they stick to that, even though there's such an obvious alternative that, like, as they're writing, they see the jiving work way better with them.
Yeah, and that can actually come down to, like, actor chemistry. Like, like just their ability and their chemistry on video when they're working together. Like, you can tell some people just jive better than others. And I think for some script writing, if all the arrows point that way, sometimes you're a little bit stuck and you have to go into that because everything has been building up to that and all your arrows point in that direction. So suddenly veering off to a place that you'd never intended when you're writing like a really long series like that and you've been dropping those plot points can feel like a cheat. Like, oh, where did this come from? Oh, blah, blah, blah. But of course, sometimes you should be flexible and you should look at the way that the wind is blowing. Ignore the fucking arrows on the floor. We have that wonderful ability when we're playing role-playing games to do that, though. We can go, oh, I've dropped all these things, but this is way more interesting, so fuck it, let's go off on a tangent and do this instead. I like that aspect of role-playing games. I like the aspect of what we do. Like, we've at least in Series 2, we've laid down certain plot points and certain things and certain directions, and arrows are written down, like, this is how this is going to go. This is the thing we're going to do. But I also know, after having chatted with you recently, that's not the way that's going to go anymore. That's going to change. And we can make that happen very easily because we have this ability to just change on a dime like that. It's not massively scripted out ahead. It's just, here's ideas. So that's why I prefer this, I guess. I'd be a shit screenwriter. I'm a shit writer. I can't do it like that.
It's a strange phenomenon in the pen and paper kind of world. It is it's not a phenomenon, but it's a thing that you can do, and it requires a certain flexibility, and that's why good DMs are hard to find. Anybody can tell a story. Not everybody can mold their expectations of their story to fit other people's narrative and ideas. I think it's often a bigger problem of, I wanted it to be like this and now my players don't. I think that's a bigger problem than a lot of DMs are willing to admit. It's I want it like this. I want it like this. And then the players are just like, nah, we're going to work with this guy. And it's like, but he was never supposed to be worked with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like, at the very beginning of the campaign, it's much easier to do that flexibility. Towards the end, it's a little bit more difficult. But otherwise, like, this is a group storytelling experience. And if I am not doing that. I should be upfront with the players before we play. Like, hi, this is a very particular set story. Your character's in it. You will be doing this, that, and the other. Much like Dark Dice has a very specific plot that Travis is going for, and we are helping him to tell that story. And I'm totally fine with that. Like, I knew that going in, that he had a plot, then things develop more, and he's like, this is my specific plot. And I'm like, great, we will mold this story together. But like, certain things I know I have to do to tell the story that he wants to tell. That's not the game we're playing here on TOD. The game we're playing here is like, well, we are 4 slightly insane people telling a slightly insane story about the end of the world. Fuck it, let's go. Some of my plot has appeared and some of it hasn't. Some of it has changed on the fly. Some of it was made on the fly. Some of those plot points, these big plot drops, these really cool world building things. Yep, that was improvised. Fuck it. And then I'll fit it together again when I do my prep. That's kind of why I like it. Well, I like doing this. It's not just me telling a story, it is our story. And if I'm not willing to be flexible on my story, then it's not, I'm a shit GM. I can't do that. I'm also not massively, I like that I have a good imagination, but what other people put in is what makes it really good. Like those little twists, those little extras, the things that I didn't see coming. It's my part of being a player versus me being a GM is you guys throwing random shit at me. Building the world as you go, Aethel.
Yes, as like, any DM and player should do.
There were never going to be any cliffs near Chatbox.
No, there are cliffs now, trees? And they're haunted.
Never going to be any fucking trees in this goddamn. No, I'm joking. There's going to be trees.
No trees.
No trees.
Only bigger mushrooms people call trees.
Yes. No, yeah. Like, just world building. Like, you should do that with your players if you're playing. And otherwise, you're telling a specific story. And that's fine. If that's the game that you play as and you want to play, sure, go right ahead. But that's not the game I want to play. I find that boring. That's just me.
Absolutely. I think that's a fine place to leave it off.
Oh, the things are boring? Yeah.
No.
This has been a super boring episode.
No.
Thanks for being here, though.
Be flexible. Tell the story with your players. Dummy.
Yes. Yeah, I guess that's it. I don't think I have any other notes. Let me just check my notes real quick.
Yeah. I've been guiding this train quite harshly on my tracks. So if you have any notes or points.
So I have a note in here about a goat burger. I literally start off by saying, I don't want to talk about the animals in this world, and then about 3 seconds later describe that there are goat burgers. That's it. That's the only thing I want to bring up. Do. And I still don't want to talk about the animals of this world. I didn't write them. I haven't written magical animals. I haven't written pet stores. Fuck it. If you ask about it, I'll make it up. But I did not want to have to make it up. But 3 seconds later, we had goat burgers. That's it. That's the only thing I want to talk about.
Every blacksmith has like a pet pseudo dragon or like a flame salamander or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
fire newt. Yeah, that kind of shit.
Fire newt, yeah. All right. Let's end it on Goatburger then. Thank you everybody for listening. This was episode 5 of Beyond the Eclipse. If you want to see more episodes of Beyond the Eclipse, the current release schedule of them is set on the Patreon. Please join the Patreon if you haven't already. If you're interested in the world or the lore that has been built, there's a lot of it on the website. We are quite active on both Twitter and Facebook, so if you enjoy our content, join us on Twitter and Facebook. You can get a lot more of it. If you enjoy our personalities and bullshit like that, you can find us.
Also the Discord. Other than that, please go check out the Etsy store. Like Kessie, who's the voice of Lisbeth, Fazea, and if you're called up, Tauri, and Aethel have been working really hard to make charms and enamel pins, and new Skullivers are available in the Etsy store. Go check that out. They worked really hard on it and they look amazing. You may also have access before we do, because I only have access to the pins right now, because we live in a country where it's horrible to ship to. Please go check that out. They worked really hard on it and they look amazing. Also, Bandcamp. Go check out Bandcamp for some of this beautiful music, which you can hear in episode 5. Some of that is, in fact, available on the Bandcamp. So go check that out. There'll be links somewhere.
Yeah, on the Etsy store is also tiny little Skullivers. So if you want a Skulliver of your own, come join us there. Thank you everybody for joining us, and see you around.
Bye.
Bye.